Listen up, hikers. Green Giant here, one of your instructors.
You're going to school!
School, what? We came here to be entertained, not educated. Well, stick around. You're about to get a little bit of each. Welcome to our first episode in a series called Long Distance Prep School. This is a series of weekly live streams that we're bringing to you, in which we plan to offer a weekly discussion with a panel of experts regarding topics that are important to anyone who might be planning a long distance hike for this year. The topic for this first episode is, what are you afraid of? We will be joined this evening by Reptar, a guy who has worn out probably a couple of dozen pairs of hiking boots and made a documentary on his hike on the Appalachian Trail, and someone who needs little to no introduction, Miss Janet. So stick around for that. Before we get started, a couple things I want to call your attention to. If you've still got your phone in your hand, check out the new artwork for this week's episode. That's brought to us by Mark Calcaney. Last thing before we get started, I want to address this part specifically to the class of 2018. If you just finished your through hike, whether you completed it or not, what we would like you to do is call the Stories from the Trail hotline, and in about 30 seconds or less, leave one piece of advice that you would give to someone who is starting their hike this year. You can do that at our Stories from the Trail hotline, which is 828-365-8041. There's a link to that in the show notes, which means if you're listening to the show on a phone, which you probably are, you've already got your phone in your hand. Just look at the show notes. The phone number's right there. Just touch it. Just touch that link and you'll be connected to the Stories from the Trail hotline. Leave a message for next year's class of thru hikers. What's one piece of advice that you would like to give them? Okay, enough of me blabbing. Here's the show, which is more of me blabbing.
I'm sorry, I don't know what I just jumped into the middle of. I just wondered if we're
raving about Goodwill.
Okay, I'm checking my own voice level here. You guys all sound great, technically at least. I don't know what you're talking about sounds so great. I wasn't really paying attention. It's weird. I get in this mode where I'm like, I don't pay attention to the words. All I can hear is just the sound, how loud you are, or
yeah. Do you hear the words that are coming out of my mouth?
But that's basically how you sum up, just in general, what having a conversation with Daniel is just like.
Oh wow! Shots fired.
Shots fired.
Shots fired.
Cool.
That's the name of the show. Shots fired.
That's not the name of the show. So yeah, I noticed that there were a lot more people in the Discord than there are in the voice channel right now. So I just wanted to throw something out there in the text part, at least, to remind people that you need to jump into they can't hear me saying this, but you have to join the voice channel to be able to hear what we're saying.
Yeah.
So I just typed.
How are you going to make that happen?
Well, I just put something in our chat that says, "Hey, click on this thing." So, and I'm noticing that a lot of people are starting to show up, and see a lot of names I recognize, a lot of names I don't. One that I do, unless we have an imposter in our midst, it's quite possible that there's a Miss Janet on the line. Is that true?
Yeah, she's over there. I see her on that. There she is. Say something, Janet.
No, I see.
I don't know where it came from.
Yeah, I see her on there, but she's not saying anything. So, yeah, well, regardless. Hi, Miss Janet. Okay.
Oh, hi, Gary. How's it going? You all right?
You sound a little hoarse. How are things going?
Lots of drinking, Gary. You know, you got to keep warm. That's the way to do it.
By drinking? Is that what you're suggesting?
Hey, it restricts the blood flow. Makes you nice and toasty.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, I got a message from our guest this evening, Reptar, who said that he was going to be joining us a little bit late. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually kick off. We'll probably have enough time just talking about what we're doing and talking amongst ourselves before he gets here to really get things going. So give me just a second here, and I'm going to get this going officially. Okay, cool. All right, so welcome to Welcome to the very first ever session of Stories from the Trail presents Long Distance Prep School. We're so excited to do this that we made a theme song for you, and I want to play the theme song for you right now. We have a special theme song just for this episode. Here it goes.
You're going to school.
Oh man,
That's all it. That's all it was.
that's it.
Yeah, good.
I guess it's more of a bumper than a theme song. But yeah, Travis came over the other day and he brought his guitar with him, and we just that's Daniel saying you're going to school, and that's what we're doing here. I think we should start by doing something that we haven't done in a long time, and that's introduce ourselves, or I guess we'll be reintroducing ourselves, because it has been 1 year and 1 day since we started doing this podcast, and I think that's the last time that we ever actually just said, for the listeners, who we are, what our to use a term that Zach Davis uses a lot, we'll say what our hiking resume is, as in, why should we be listening to these people? Who are you and what do you know about hiking? You could be just anyone. Well, here's who we are. My name is Gary Sizer. My trail name is Green Giant. I hiked the Appalachian Trail in 2014, and I did this after about 20 years of hiking a whole bunch of other trails too. Most of them way, way shorter than the Appalachian Trail. I think my longest hike prior to hiking the AT was maybe like 30 or 40 or like maybe 50 miles over a week-long period, and that was it. I am also the author of Where's the Next Shelter, which is a book about my 2014 hike. And one of the main characters in that book is weird to say main character in a book about a person who's a real person.
An actual person in real life.
An actual
IRL.
human being whose voice you hear along with me. This is Megan Thompson, who I met on that hike, trail name Voldemort. Hello, Megan.
And I didn't write a book like Gary, but I did hike the same year in 2014 after graduating from university. And as far as my resume goes, I had a few day hikes under my belt before hiking the AT and absolutely zero backpacking experience. So I just kind of dove right in there. And Gary, what else do I need to say about my resume?
I think that's good enough for now.
That's sufficient.
Yep.
I didn't write a book after. I went back into the real world.
Anybody get the pipe in here?
What's that, Larry?
I was just wondering what. I mean, you're just piping in, everybody's just giving their experience.
Well, actually, we were just doing that with the hosts of the show. But since you're a prominent guest and a prominent figure in the hiking community, why don't you go ahead and say a little bit about yourself too, Larry? Because we're going to be asking you some questions tonight. Go ahead, Larry.
Really? Oh.
Go for it.
All right. Well, I'm Crazy Larry. Well, actually, my trail name is The Only Wanderer, but a lot of people call me Toe for short. My old time hiking buddies. I lived on the trail for 3 years, running from the law. And anyway, one night I had a spiritual experience, changed my thinking. I went back and turned myself in, got it all behind me, and I've been free since 2005. And I've been around the community since 2000. I mean, I've been back into the community since 2005. But I hiked up here for trail days. I was heading to Harper's Ferry, but I ended up in the hospital and just ended up staying here, and got in the hostel business about 6 years ago.
Yeah,
and,
that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to ask you about, especially a little bit later tonight, Larry. What you do up there in Damascus is pretty amazing. I say up there. Yeah, Larry. Probably how many hikers do you think you've met, Larry?
A few thousand.
Yeah, easily a few thousand.
And,
Crazy.
I've had them. Like Billy Goat came in 2 or 3 times this year. I mean, like the first time he just popped in to meet me from the PCT. I met all kinds of different hikers. I met Tattoo Joe from the PCT, who used to hold the record out there. Yeah. And plus, this Trans-American Bicycle Route comes through here.
Yep.
And I get a lot of bicyclists staying with me. I got Juliana Bullring and the first Trans American bicycle race stayed with me, and she's the Guinness Book World Record holder of fastest woman around the world on a bicycle.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. Yep. So Larry's up there in Damascus, and I say up there because between the three of us, I guess we've kind of got the East Coast nailed down. I'm down here in the South. Well, geez, yeah, Daniel's on the phone too. Daniel's down there by Springer Mountain. Daniel's just north of Georgia. I'm here in Asheville. Larry is in Damascus, Virginia, and Megan is all the way up in the East Coast, way up north in Maine. You're in Maine right now, aren't you?
I am indeed.
Okay, all right. I don't know if you were at home or if you were in. So you're in Portland, as we talked about in our last episode.
Yes.
You were in the process
Yep.
of moving to Portland, and you're there now, right?
Now, in the biggest city in Maine, which only has EMS.
You were lamenting not having a Trader Joe's last time or something like that, weren't you?
Yeah, because I was living in New Hampshire, like far, far west in New Hampshire, like on the Vermont border. So I didn't have a Trader Joe's near me. And now I am only drive from a Trader Joe's and a Whole Foods. Guys, it's amazing. It's so amazing.
You're so
Grocery
lucky.
shopping and food, obviously.
Like a normal civilized person.
Like a normal person or normal hiker.
There you go. So perfect timing. I see Reptar is in the chat, and I just gave him the heads up, jump in the voice channel. So we'll be hearing from him in just a second.
Hello.
There he is. Hello. Hey, what's going on, man?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Hey,
Hello, Reptar.
your timing couldn't. I was going to say your timing couldn't be more perfect, but I guess it could. You could be a little earlier. I'm not going to yell at you. We're on hiker time. We were just going around the table introducing ourselves, and we just ran out of people to introduce when you showed up. So that's why I said perfect timing. Why don't you want to go ahead and say hi to everybody? Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah. My name is Andrew.
Or do you need
also
a moment
known
to
as
relax and open a beer first and sit down and?
I already I'm already on that. That's why it took me a little bit longer.
All right, I'm sorry.
like your
I won't interrupt you again. Can you say again? I'm sorry.
Yeah. My real name is Andrew. My trail name is Reptar. And in 2015, I thru hiked the Appalachian Trail and shot a little documentary called the AT Experience. And in 2017, I set out to hike the Pacific Crest Trail, but it was kind of a rough year for that, and a whole bunch of stuff happened through that thru hike. So I got about 1,500 or so miles in on that one, and yeah, next June I'll be getting back on and finishing that one.
You've been chomping at the bit to get back out there for a while too. I can tell.
Oh man, it's crazy because I've got all this footage for this other documentary I'm working on, and just seeing that over and over just makes me miss the trail so much.
Yeah. So the AT Experience, this movie that you made is one of a very small number of AT documentaries that I'll actually recommend. I'm not one of those guys who will just like, oh, somebody made a show and I want, and I will just say, yeah, you should see it. No, I one of the things I really enjoyed about yours is that it was super tightly edited. The editing on that thing was just, I'm a bit of a technical nerd when it comes to video editing and audio editing and that sort of thing. So maybe that's not, like I get excited when they announce the Oscar for best editing. And, but did you do your own, was that all you, or did you have a team?
No, it was all me, man. The only thing that I outsourced was the music for it.
Okay. And there's some damn good music
I licensed,
in that thing too.
Yeah, I licensed a couple songs from a couple different folks and added that to it.
Anyone from the soundtrack you want to give a shout out to?
I mean, one of my favorite groups, Odessa, that was really cool. They gave me a pretty good deal. there's a girl relatively unknown named Katie Kirby who I think is really talented.
Okay.
Mhm. So can you hear me? Testing.
Is that Miss Janet?
Hello, Miss Janet.
Hello, everybody.
Oh my
Hearing
goodness.
your
Hey,
voice.
Miss J.
Hey, Reptar. Hearing your all's voices is making me smile.
Hey,
Nice to hear your voice. It's been so long.
Well, it's nice to see you all.
Yeah, you just lit this place up so brightly. I'm going to turn off the lamp in my office here. You got the
Funny, you're so cute.
So we've had Miss Janet on the show before when we were at when we were at the AT kickoff at the start of this year. You and I sat down and spent some time together in a closed room, and that was absolutely magical. And then
What a long, strange year it's been.
and then we recorded an interview. No, see, okay, never mind. I was being silly. Yeah. So, unless you don't want to say, unless you're laying low, where are you hanging out these days?
Oh, it's winter. I'm hibernating in East Tennessee with my family.
Okay, so you're just over the ridge from Asheville. Then I could.
Yeah, I can leave here and be in my favorite restaurants in Asheville in about an hour. So not too far.
We're at a pretty cool place. Nice.
I heard you all talking about REI earlier, and I did go to REI and to buy some carabiners for my mimic setup, and he tried to interest me in a tarp. I think it weighed about 8 pounds.
Oh my goodness!
Wow.
It was a really big tarp.
Was it meant for was it meant to cover the van too, or just
Maybe that's what he had in mind. I'm not sure.
So I'm hoping that you'll stick around and be one of the people who we can rely on to answer some of the questions that are sure to come up.
That sounds awesome. I want to listen in and spend this winter day talking about springtime stuff.
Okay, cool. Well, springtime, that's a good way to transition into what it is we're going to get into. Because even though, today is the day after Christmas, it's only been winter technically for 5 days. Springtime is going to be here so fast that it's going to make your head spin, especially if you're one of the literally thousands of people right now who are just drumming their fingers on the table nervously with anticipation, just watching the clock tick, not slow enough. The AT kickoff cannot get here soon enough. There are, thousands of people out there who are just, they can't wait. But it's going to get here just like that. Next thing you know, next thing you know, the birds are going to be singing. The days are going to be getting longer. It's going to be warming up out there. Even before it warms up, people are going to be hitting the trail. So,
oh yeah.
So,
thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's always great to talk to you. So, one of the things that we're trying to do with these weekly Discord sessions now is address in each week a topic that will help you prepare for your first your first long distance hike. And since we're still about as far away as we can be from what most people would consider the average northbound kickoff, we still want to address things that are relevant to flip-floppers, southbounders. There will be start dates as late as July or even August for some of the people who are who are getting prepared right now. So one of the things that always that kind of always comes into people's minds, we will talk about gear. We will talk about logistics. I'm glad that Larry is here because eventually we're going to talk about, and I say eventually, not tonight, but in future sessions, we're going to talk about where do you stay during your long distance hike. When you're sick of being in the woods and you have to go to town, where do you stay? I remember when I started hiking, I didn't know what a hostel was. So we're going to talk about it's a hostile environment is what it is. Yep. So eventually,
all I knew about hostels was from the movies. Hostels 1, 2, maybe 3 or 4. I don't even know how many there are, but
Watch that movie.
Yeah, I don't think that's an accurate.
there are multiples, Larry, and I did watch multiples of them. I don't think it was my own choice, though. But that's what I knew about hostels. So that'll be a really fun conversation.
I had a woman told me, she said, I ain't going to stay at no hostel. I said, it ain't called a hostel. It's called a hostel. She said, I know, but I watched that movie. Hostel, and I ain't going to stay here. And I said, yeah, I probably don't want you to stay either. After we both left.
So as you can imagine, there are a lot of topics that we can cover, and we want to do them in an order that makes sense. So we will be publishing a list of what those topics are in multiple places. One of the first people who get the messages and alerts and things like this that we publish is, of course, people who check out our Patreon page. Megan, you're good at that. What's our Patreon?
Patreon is patreon.com/storiesfromthetrail.
Simple and easy, right? We will also be publishing, I guess it's a curriculum, right? I mean, this is a class, and we're going to list out what order the sessions are going to take place.
Curriculum, agenda.
Yeah. Agenda sounds too much like a business meeting. I don't know. Curriculum sounds like what about a trip?
It does sound more educational.
How about
it's more
syllabus?
academic.
Ooh, I know.
Syllabus.
Itinerary. Because it's travel.
Right.
It's travel.
Sounds like you're going on a trip, though.
Yeah.
I guess you are going on a trip, though.
Free mushrooms for everyone. Oh, not that kind of a trip, Gary. What are you doing? Sorry, I was distracted by the unicorns. What was I talking about? Oh, yes, the curriculum.
Your bad jokes, Gary.
Yeah, there's going to be some of that. I apologize. That's what editing is for. So
Thank you, editing.
Yep. So curriculum will be up on the Patreon or our Facebook page. Just look for Stories from the Trail on Facebook. That's easy. And Instagram, and basically all the places that you would look for things on the internet. We're gonna try to be there for you. So tonight, the topic that I want to cover is something that's probably in everybody's mind who's getting ready to do something like that, and that is fear. And specifically, the way I want to address this is what were you afraid of? I want to go around and talk to the people who have done their long distance hikes already. And the question for you is, what were you afraid of before you went on your first long distance hike? And I think I would like to start with Reptar, if that's okay.
Yeah. I had never really hiked before. I had gone on a couple day hikes. So I'd say just the sheer magnitude of it was intimidating. Everybody's always like, hey, if you hear the banjos, run, and watch out for hillbillies and that kind of thing. And
hey, now.
Hey, well, hold on. I'm not done yet. So, you go in with this preconceived notion that the trail is a terrifying place, and then you step foot on it. And then you meet these amazing people, and you eventually realize that you are the hillbilly, and that when you hear banjos, you want to gravitate towards that because that's where the cool people are.
Yeah, whenever I hear banjo music, there's also usually the smell of barbecue nearby.
Yes, food is always a plus.
So where are you from that that people were afraid of banjos, figuratively?
Well, I'm kind of from a hodgepodge of places. I'm originally from Northern Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C. I lived in New York City. I've lived in Los Angeles, and most recently, I'm living in Key West, Florida. So basically, it was mostly my northern people and some of my Key West friends that were skeptical about me embarking on a trip like that.
Yeah. There's usually skepticism from someone. I remember, when I said what I was doing, someone who's a very close friend of mine sent me a message that asked me if I was. It was basically have you gone insane email, but it was, very it was very politely worded and really concerned. Like, are you really okay?
To have an intervention type of email.
You want to go live in you want to what?
Yep, definitely got that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, other than that, you think about bears and rattlesnakes and things like that.
Ooh,
but
yeah,
once you actually encounter bears and rattlesnakes, you realize that bears, on the most part, want nothing to do with you, and all you have to
Right.
do is clap your hands and they'll run away. Well, black bears anyway. And rattlesnakes, if you just give them some space, they're not going to bug you. So I think the wildlife, I heard Megan talking about bear mace earlier, and yeah, I've never carried anything more than a keychain pocket knife with me as protection. However, I think on the Continental Divide, when I do that one, I might carry some bear and mace up north because I heard they got some grizzlies up there.
Different types of bears up there.
Yeah.
Your pocket knife's not going to do much against those grizzlies.
Yeah, right.
Not going to do much against anything, really. I mean, maybe humans. I don't know. Well, it'll come in handy.
You might pack a 44. I think they make a 2-shot 44.
Yeah. So, okay. So there's a good question. Let's just jump into let's dive knee deep into some controversy and talk about guns on the trail.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's talk about guns on the trail. I see this come up online an awful lot. People ask,
all the time.
Do I need to protect myself with a firearm on the trail? Who wants
By the way,
I'm going to chime in.
Go ahead. Larry, hang on a second. Go ahead, Reptar.
I actually I made a YouTube video about this where I actually researched the statistics of animal attacks and human attacks and basically situations that would require you to possibly need a firearm. And it is such a very small percentage that it's kind of like playing the lottery, I think. There is a very infinitesimal probability that you will win, but it's still a probability nonetheless. And, if you're interested in that, I definitely would say go check out my YouTube channel, Reptar Hikes, and look for that video, because I actually I contacted the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, as well as did a bunch of other research to get some statistics on that.
Okay. Yeah. There you go. Research is good.
One of the things that I've seen with people who carry along the trail is also that fear that other people around them will know that they're carrying on the trail, which usually means that any weapon that they have is buried deep inside their pack, where I'm not sure it would be any good in almost any condition, in any circumstance. So I think it's a personal choice in a lot of ways, but I'm not real sure that it's worth the extra weight for anyone.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what, I've seen, and I personally, and I haven't witnessed it lately, but
yeah, go for it.
Back when I first got this thing going, man, there was quite a few of my hikers were packing pieces, and or I noticed they were anyway. And I mean, I still do occasionally have a hiker, that exposes, and I mean, most of the time nobody's letting me know that they're packing a piece. If they are, I don't know.
So you see,
I don't think very many people though do it on a hoe.
Okay, so you what I'm hearing is there's a small percentage of situations in which you would actually need such a thing. Of those situations, there's a small percentage that it would actually do any good. If you're being charged by a grizzly bear, I think even if you do have like a deer rifle, you're gonna need to get at least 3 shots. You know what I mean? Like, so I really don't think there's a pistol that's gonna stop an angry grizzly. Maybe if you're lucky to, 2 or 3 shots at close range with something with a big bore and a short barrel, maybe. But again, you've got to have it at the ready. They're heavy. You have to maintain them. I was in the military for, almost 10 years. And one of my least favorite things to do, I hated it so much, was taking care of a firearm in the outdoors for an extended period of time. It's such a giant pain in the ass. But still, a lot of people do it, and here's the way I like to. This is my 2 cents on it. I've been hiking for 26 years now, and I have yet to encounter any type of problem on the trail where the answer was a bullet. Not to say that won't ever happen, but that's how unlikely it's been in my hiking life.
I want to make the point about legality. Like, since the trail goes through so many different states, if you were to carry responsibly as a responsible gun owner, it's your responsibility to know the laws and all of the rules in each of those states. And it's a lot of information to have that, we would not want, if your fellow hiker is carrying a gun, you would want them to know the laws and to just avoid any sort of situations where it would be, where you might have to get into trouble. I don't know. Maybe I follow the rules a little bit too much, but just my 2 cents.
This is Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Hey, I have carried on the trail out west, and all I'm going to say is, if you're going to be carrying anything, this is something that I learned on the trail. I ended up getting a relatively large caliber revolver for hiking in Montana and down into Wyoming. And if you're going to get something that is going to stop a grizzly, the problem is always going to be able to get that second shot. You better make your first shot count, because unless you're carrying a really large caliber, like specific bear type guns, 500 Smith & Wesson or a 45-70 or something like that. Even then, the chances of you stopping the bear before it gets to you is not real good. And as far as the legality problems go, there are several actual apps that are on your phone that will tell you when you're approaching a state border, and you will automatically push notification all of the reciprocal laws and everything like that for the state that you're coming up on.
Easy to do the right thing then.
Yes, it's getting easier. I am not an advocate anymore of carrying on the trail. I don't like Gary. I've had one run in where it could have been handy, but other than that, the bear spray. I think would have had a better shot at stopping the grizzly with the bear spray than I would actually, because I was carrying like I said, a large caliber handgun, and I'm a little guy, and the chances of me, when I'm panicking, getting 2 shots off on a charging grizzly bear are about nil. I think most people on the trail, and I've talked to several women on the trail who do carry strictly for self-defense, and I think that may be a more appropriate usage, considering some of the things that have happened on the trail over the years. But so I'm not advocating one way or another. Mm-hmm. But it definitely seems that among the people who are carrying now, it does seem that there are a lot more women carrying than there are guys, actually.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with the self-defense from people aspect of it, because statistically, if you look at it, the amount of animal attacks are few and far between, as well as people. The trail is no matter which trail you're on, is technically safer than probably the city that you live in or a major city near you. So, I think that it's kind of, if it makes you feel safer, I wouldn't say do or do not carry it. Um, I hiked with a guy that did carry, and he never had to use it. He's still to this day carried just when he was on trail, but it's just kind of one of those things that it's not worth the wait, in my opinion.
I guess, it also depends heavily on the location too. Like we're also, a heavily Americanized audience, but there are, people listening from all over the world where, carrying a weapon or carrying a firearm on the trail simply isn't even an option. The only other thing I can think of where it might be appropriate is if you were like way up in Alaska. There are places where, you either need to have a rifle or someone in the party has to be a licensed to carry a rifle because of polar bear attacks being.
Yeah, those you have like electric fences that go up around your campsite at night, and you have to hire a guard, and even that doesn't always work.
Yeah, and I think other than like one or two spots in the whites, you're not going to get that on the AT.
You're not even going to get close to that on the
AT. Okay,
Gary, you say that with a straight face, people are going to believe you.
That's why I do that.
Trying to convince people here there are polar bears in the White Mountains. God.
Yeah, it turns out it's just
spreading misinformation. God,
I'm loving this rumor. We need to keep this one going.
The reason the dungeon at Lakes of the Clouds is the dungeon is because that's the only place where the polar bears can't get you.
Oh, that's funny. Yep. And it turns out that Crazy Larry's hostel isn't actually run by Crazy Larry. It's 3 raccoons in a trench coat.
What?
Man, yeah. So we could probably do an entire episode, talking about, firearms on the trail. I keep wanting to say weapons. That's my military training. They make you call it a weapon, or you have to do push-ups, and you kind of never goes away. But we could probably do an entire show about, guns on the trail. But I kind of want to bring it back around and ask the general question again about what were you afraid of before your first long hike, and I'd like to hear what Megan has to say about that.
Afraid of people with guns.
Are you serious? Really? That was it?
In part, my biggest fear was other people, and part of that goes along with just what characters am I going to meet. I don't know. Don't spend a lot of time in the Appalachian wilderness down south. I don't know what it's like down there. I know that there's a lot more people carrying guns down south than, well, I guess we do have a lot up here in New England. But that was one of my concerns. I mean, since we're right on the topic of guns, but in general, people were my biggest concern, I think. Just trying to make sure that I was safe, because, that was what my parents were the most afraid of. So, of course, they passed their fears to me.
Okay. While we're talking, by the way, I encourage people listening to go ahead and throw, type something in the chat and tell us what, if you have not done your long distance through hike yet, tell us what you're afraid of, and we'll address those. Or if you're a grizzled veteran, tell us what you were afraid of before. Megan said, "Ooh, what you got?"
Got the other really big fear, ticks.
Oh, okay.
Really afraid of contracting Lyme disease or Rocky Mountain spotted fever or any of the other probable tick-borne illnesses that we have not yet put a name to, because they're spreading a lot more. Like, we've been getting a lot more of them up in Maine. And I think we even had like a case of Rocky Mountain spotted fever in Maine. I want to say there was at least a case here in New England, whereas it used to live just on the West Coast, exclusively on the West Coast. But we've, of course, seen a huge increase in a lot of tick-borne illnesses. And like with Lyme disease, it's one of those things where, you can get it. It can lay dormant for a long time and then bite you in the ass years later. And I've known a lot of people who have had Lyme disease. I've met a lot of people who have suffered because of it. Some people are, their bodies bounce back pretty quickly, and other people, it puts them in a wheelchair and ruins a decade of their life. So there are people who are all over that spectrum. So that was a big thing. I was very, very conscious about what can I do proactively while home before getting on the trail to reduce my chances of having any type of tick bite and contracting any type of tick-borne illness.
So
Call it paranoia.
What can you do proactively from home to reduce the
So
likelihood
you
of
can douse
tick-borne?
yourself.
I was trying so hard to say what you said.
You can douse yourself in chemicals, guys.
The
No.
heck of garlic, onions.
What's that, Larry? I think he's gone. So
I think Miss
for-
Miss Janet's trying to say something.
No, I was just moving my phone.
Oh.
I'm enjoying you all too much.
Well, when I say douse yourself in chemicals, what I mean is there are, and someone can correct me on my pronunciation, it's either permethrin or permethrin. I think it's permethrin is the name of one of those pre-treatments that you can do yourself. It's a DIY thing. You can buy a bottle of it. You can actually get it at Walmart, I think. You can get it a lot of different outdoor stores that are not specifically geared towards backpacking. And you pre-treat your clothes with that. And so that's what I did before the trail. I pre-treated my socks, my pants. I did, let's see, I think a jacket or something. You're not supposed to pre-treat base layers or anything that gets really, really close to your face, I think. But, they sell buffs that are pre-treated. There's actually a service and there's a service that actually you can pack your clothes into a box and send it to them and they'll pre-treat it for you. I haven't yet tried that, but that's a thing that exists out there. And you can also buy clothes at the store that are already impregnated with permethrin.
Okay. So I noticed that none of those solutions, at least the chemical-based ones that you mentioned so far, had anything to do with applying DEET out of a spray bottle or a lotion.
No, because that's step 2.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
I'm telling you, I was paranoid about ticks. So I pre-treated everything. And on top of that, I carried with me some type of DEET containing bug spray. I went with a higher percentage, which is not good for you. Like, don't eat it.
Don't drink the DEET.
But also be really, really careful. Like when you spray it on, if it's in a pump spray, sometimes that gets on your fingers. So make sure that you wash your hands with soap and water after you do that before you touch your eyes or any mucous membranes, like anything like your and whatever. Like before you pick your nose, wash your hands. If you've just recently touched DEET. Like while on the trail, we just pick our noses like it's no big deal. Like, oh, we just went pee and then we picked our nose, no big deal. But like seriously, if you have DEET on your hands, just wash your hands before you pick your nose.
you know that I am going to take that out of context and have you just say that people should pick their
Please
noses.
do. It's a good one. It's a good one.
Megan,
I just like to offer up an all natural solution that is personally what I did, and that was just be diligent about tick checks and kind of buddy up every now and then, where kind of like 2 chimpanzees in the wild, just kind of foraging through each other's hair and whatnot, trying to make sure you're all good.
You can douse yourself in chemicals all you want all day long, but ultimately, like, you really do need to do a tick check no matter how many chemicals you put on your body. Whether you go with a chemical treatment or whether you go with like a natural bug spray that has like lemongrass or citronella in it or whatever. I mean, those things are all great and dandy. I don't know about their effectiveness, but always, always, always do a tick check. And that's something that I think a lot of people forget to do. And they forget to like, you don't just like take off your shirt and your pants and just like, look at my legs, look at my back, look at my chest. Okay, I'm good. No, you really gotta look everywhere. You gotta look between your toes. Down in the nitty gritty spots, because that's where the ticks like to go.
I'm not sure why Brad Paisley's I want to check you for ticks isn't a A trail theme song.
It really should be. I thought of that, but he meant it to be romantic, but it's so practical. So practical.
But really,
Megan.
I've seen that song to a couple of girls before.
Yes, Mark.
I was wondering, did you ever spill any of the DEET or have the DEET spill in your pack?
It did. I think I had one bottle. It was like a little, like a breath mint size. I don't know what like a little small tube.
Did
like
it?
A tester perfume bottle that spilled a little bit, and it kind of degraded a little bit of the stuff sack that I was in. So from then out, I kept it in a plastic bag, a sealed Ziploc bag, because that stuff will eat away at fabrics.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I've had it eat the foam out of a climbing helmet. It spilled into my pack, and I got to the top of or the base of a climb, pulled my helmet out, and it was just a little plastic shell with all the foam eaten out.
Wow.
So
I never experienced it that badly, but it's one of those things too, like the higher percentage DEET you have, the more it's going to eat away at whatever it spills onto.
Yeah.
I took
to wash your damn hands before you pick your nose.
I always wash my hands before I go to the bathroom too, because I don't know. I know, I know, because I know where my hands have been, and anyway, I took the Reptar approach on my hike on the AT, and did not use any chemicals, spray or coating or lotion or DEET or permethrin or none of that. I just diligently checked for ticks every single day, and you know what happened? I got Lyme disease.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hey, that's rough.
I'll tell you though, one of the best ways that you can conquer one of your worst fears is to have that thing come true, and to actually get through it. Because I'll tell you what, now having had Lyme disease, I'm not as afraid of ticks anymore. I still, that's the way I've been doing it for years. I use barriers. I use the barrier method. I tuck my pants into my socks, and I wear long sleeves if I know I'm going into tick territory, and I'll check myself. Which I did, and I never found the tick that got me. So I was very surprised when I started displaying symptoms. I didn't even know that I had Lyme disease. People have heard me tell this story a bunch of times before. I'm going to tell it again anyway. That when I first started coming down with it, I thought that I was getting the flu, because I would get goosebumps and I couldn't quite get my body temperature right. I was hot, then I was cold. And I was lethargic, and I wanted to take naps all the time, which turns out is also what happens as you just get older. But when you're cranking out 20-mile days, and then out of nowhere you just want to sleep 15, 16 hours a day, something's wrong. And the red spots never really appeared until almost a week into it, and when they did, they didn't take on that classic bullseye pattern that we hear so much about. It was more like a solid red circle that was colored in, and it was so small that I thought that I had contracted ringworm from, people say you get ringworm in the shelters. I never actually saw it happen, but it's one of those rumors. It's another one of those things people are afraid of, I guess. So I went to the doctor and I said, "Hey, I have the flu and ringworm," and she just laughed at me. She said, "Think about where do you live and what do you do?" And I was like, "I live outside all day." She's like, "Yeah, you have Lyme disease, my friend." And the solution was 1 round of an antibiotic called doxycycline, which is it's a prescription that actually I have a standing prescription with my doctor. He gave me a prescription and signed it and said, "You keep this. If you're ever going to go anywhere, just go get it filled and take it, bring it along with you just in case." So if you start exhibiting symptoms, you can start taking doxycycline, because even if you don't have Lyme disease, it's the kind of antibiotic that's not going to, mess you up if you go through a full cycle of it. So
they will also prescribe doxycycline if you have had a tick bite and are unable to identify the tick. within the past couple years, I think it was like 2 years ago, I found a tick on my arm that seemed to be partially engorged, and it was crawling on me. It hadn't burrowed in, but I didn't know whether or not it had been previously burrowed into my skin or my dog's skin, whether or not the blood was hers or mine. And so I went to the doctor. I said, I'm paranoid. This tick may or may not have bitten me, and I can't tell what it is, but it looks kind of like a deer tick, which is the ticks that carry Lyme disease. And so my doctor said, hey, take her around to doxycycline. Not a big deal. It's only 2 pills for just a 2-day course for kind of a preventative measure. So even if you get a tick bite and you just feel paranoid, sometimes, drugs will make you feel better.
I want to chime in there, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in order to contract Lyme's disease, there's like a 24-hour gestation period
I'm so
which
glad.
Yeah, it's got to be
I'm
attached.
so glad you asked that.
attached.
That's actually not been completely proven to be true. It could be as few as a few hours before you can contract Lyme. And because you will probably never find the tick that is the culprit. He resides in the nether regions and in tight places around your socks
And they're so small.
and in
They're
the back
tiny.
of your head. And I like a lot of you, but I'm not going to check you for ticks in certain places. And that's the problem is when you have a tick that it can be on you for 48 to 72 hours and gone, and you will never come near where he's hiding. And you probably would not feel it if you found it. It's better to just understand the symptoms. I'm sorry, I seem to be having issues with my technology.
There
as
you
usual.
go. You're loud and clear now. There you go.
Okay, great. Yes.
You were saying you contracted Lyme disease?
In 2013 and was not sufficiently treated in the initial phase. It's summertime. A lot of people will start taking their medications. Sunburn happens. They quit taking their medication because you're living in the sun. And there's a lot of different reasons that people are insufficiently treated. For me, it was because I first went to a doctor who did not recognize Lyme as even a possibility and did not treat with the correct medications. So unfortunately, I have suffered for 5 years with chronic Lyme symptoms that some people will definitely have those issues. I just ask people when they're on the trail, no matter what their prevention regime and treatment is, to take showers frequently, as often as you possibly can. There's no honor in the dirty hiker, not in the summertime and not in tick territories, which is pretty much Georgia to Maine, in all seasons. Which is the other misconception about ticks is you can find deer ticks at all seasons along the trail. Is to just be conscious of your own body. And when you know that the tired, fatigue, and symptoms that you've been feeling every day for your thru hike are suddenly a little different, pay attention to your body and go to a doctor. You will probably be treated without any testing. So you may never know for sure if you actually had Lyme with or without a bullseye rash. But it's better to be treated and to be wrong than to not be treated and find out later that you do have symptoms that you're not going to be getting rid of very easy.
And I just want to harp in on that. So little known fact is I'm a bit of a hypochondriac, and when I set out to do the Appalachian Trail, I actually had a prescription for, and I'm probably butchering this, doxycycline, before I headed out, in the event that I noticed some symptoms but was unable to get to a doctor in time. Fortunately, I never needed it, but that's just one of the things that I had, as well as medical strength anti-nausea medicine.
Okay. So,
If you got like norovirus, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there was only one. I actually didn't do that on the Appalachian Trail. Um, and it was a friend of mine that was carrying it because she got motion sickness very easily. But we ended up splitting apart, and she gave me all of her anti-nausea meds, which ended up working out for me in the long run. But most of the time, it was just kind of one of those things that if I noticed somebody else was ill, just kind of like I always carry extra water for other people. And, that's kind of reverting back to what we were talking about earlier about having to, possibly carry a gun and worrying about other people on trail. I think the trail community really does a good job of taking care of itself for the most part. Obviously, wild animals and ticks are things that you really have to kind of keep your own eye on. I mean, I know for a fact Miss Janet knows that, if there's some seedy groups of people on trail or something like that, the trail angels are very close with each other and hear the rumors and pass the word forward to other locations. So, I
The
know.
network is real.
Yeah, I know for a fact, like, I got to a place and I was with a guy that I didn't even really know, and they were like, "No, you can't stay here." So just sorry to kind of backtrack, but I just felt like that needed to be acknowledged.
yeah, no, that's good. That's relevant stuff. And when you say things like the trail community takes care of itself, and people use phrases like the trail provides, those statements are true because there are people like Miss Janet and Reptar out there on the trail, helping people and carrying water for other people. When people say you need to worry about other hikers, that's what they mean. You need to worry about whether your fellow hikers are doing all right or not, because you got to look out for each other. Reptar, I know you're.
When it comes,
Oh,
even tying that back into Lyme,
yeah.
one of the things that I see is if you don't see someone for a period of time, if a couple of weeks go by, and you often will notice changes in that hiker that maybe they haven't even noticed. So you get to know each other pretty well, and sometimes you can tell there's just something a little off. Are you feeling okay? Well, I've been having these symptoms, and no one wants to think that they have something that may potentially put them off the trail. So sometimes they don't want to think about it and they don't want to talk about it. So looking out for each other is sometimes just saying, hey, you know, have you gone to the all ramen all the time diet, or do you think, are you having some issues? You got, how are you feeling?
Have you had a vegetable since Damascus? Yeah, that was one of my big problems.
Or a shower, maybe.
Yeah, seriously, It's amazing how
I wanted to ask a while ago if anybody ever hiked, any of you guys ever hiked through Maine in June.
Hiked in Maine in June. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Well, Megan probably has, right?
Have you hiked in Maine in June? I did the 100-mile wilderness in June. I can tell you that. Or something else. Nothing will stop them son of a guns. So I just was wondering if anybody ever used that Primathin or whatever that is that girl was talking about.
Oh yeah, the black flies.
Encountered the black flies.
That's right. Yeah, those are notorious,
those,
especially.
Those things are vicious.
Yeah, Gazelle in the chat says that she's hiked the 100-mile wilderness in June, so she knows what that's like up there. Hey, speaking of the chat room, we're up here talking about the things that we're afraid of. There's a lot of people posted and shared in our Discord chat what they were afraid of or what they are. And one of the most common things I'm seeing here is people talking about hurting their feet or having some kind of injury. Yep, there it is, almost 3 times. People are talking about a hike-ending injury being their main concern. Reptar, I want to talk to you specifically because you've got one I hate to use the word successful, but you've got one complete through hike and one partial through hike under your belt. That partial one, what was your reason for leaving the trail, if I may ask?
Well, it was a culmination of things, but time was really the thing that got me. However, on the Appalachian Trail, I was relatively injury free. I had a little bit of knee pain earlier on because my pack was just way too heavy, and I definitely recommend try to get your pack weight as light as possible. And little known fact is that when I first started the Appalachian Trail, uh, my trail name was Iceman
Iceman.
because I was icing my knees at the top of Georgia Hostel.
Oh man.
But I dropped that name because I just wasn't feeling it, and I didn't. I figured there had to be a million other Icemans out there.
Yeah. Plus,
But
someone's gonna be Goose. Next thing you know, you guys are
Top Gun in it.
wearing cutoff shorts,
So-
and making out. What? Sorry. Go on.
So, but on the PCT, I think, gosh, it was only like a week, maybe two, if that, in. I got a pretty bad foot injury, and a buddy of mine that I ended up meeting up with on trail, Snap, Hikes Camera Adventure on Instagram. You should check him out. He actually we posted up together because we both had foot injuries. He ended up having a stress fracture and having to get off, and I just kind of nursed it for a couple days.
Megan,
Stress fractures are no fun.
I was going to say you came pretty close to a hike ending injury, didn't you?
Kind of close to a couple hike ending injuries. I've actually had stress fractures before in my at all. I was stuck in a walking boot, but not while hiking. But those are tough to get rid of. I did have two close hike ending injuries. Is that what we're going with?
Yeah.
Nearly hike ending injuries, shin splints, and a bad case of cellulitis.
Yeah, you got benched for a while for that.
I had a total of like 2 weeks benched, I think. 1 week for each.
Man. All right, you want to hear what I was afraid of?
Yes.
These sound. I don't know. It's weird to go. I'm embarrassed to say.
Gary.
I'm embarrassed to say. The first thing I was afraid of was extended periods of wetness. I was
And there's so much of that.
See, this is why I don't. This is why I
swamp
don't
ass.
open
There's a lot
up
of
more
swath.
because you laugh at me when I share with you.
Well, I'm laughing because I
don't mean
empathize and I feel your pain because I dealt with a lot of extended periods of wetness myself.
And
I think we all did.
I'm referring specifically to rain, and just not just being wet and having to sleep in wet stuff and just being, cold.
Remember the Smokies, Gary?
Nearly hyper.
Remember those?
Oh God! Oh my God! Yes.
Remember when the trail was a river?
Yeah.
One epic fall?
Yeah. Seriously.
That was one of my biggest fears, was falling so badly that I decided that I would be a genius and step up on the side of the trail like you're not supposed to, and then ate shit for it because that's what I get for thinking I could walk around.
Join us again in 1 week, and we'll pick up right where we left off. We'll hear a little bit more about what people are afraid of, and then we're going to switch topics. Next time it'll be, okay, I've made up my mind, so now what? The planning phase, things you may not have thought of when getting ready to start. Next week we'll be joined by Scott, aka Squatch Harriott, who you've heard on the show before, as well as Keith Foskett, who's been on the show too. Stories from the Trail is a production of thetrek.co. Zach Davis, editor-in-chief. Your hosts are me, Gary Sizer, Green Giant, and Megan Thompson, known as Voldemort. Our music, as always, is by Lee Rosevere. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to the show. If you'd like to join us for our live recordings, it's free. Find out how by following us on Instagram or Facebook, where we'll post a link each week. And if you can't make it to the live recordings, just keep listening to the show. We'll be releasing them. If you don't want to wait 2 weeks for me to edit one, the raw audio is released immediately after each recording for all of our patrons who support the show for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/storiesfromthetrail. The show is recorded, mixed, and edited by me, Gary Sizer, here at Blanket Fort Studios, which is just me and my blanket with a basement over my head. What? Thanks for listening.
And whatever. Like before you pick your nose, wash your hands.